Hello, and welcome to this video cast produced in partnership between the National Fire Chiefs Council and the United Kingdom Rescue Organisation. I'm joined today by a panel of subject matter experts from across the sector to discuss the Extrication Framework recently launched by the NFCC. Dan, I'll come to you if I may with the first question. So can you explain to us what the framework is?
Yes, certainly. The framework, or the Extrication Framework, is a structure that outlines the knowledge, awareness, performance criteria and training required to attain and maintain competence in vehicle casualty extrication. It forms a professional standard from which firefighters at different levels can be assessed and benchmarked, establishing effectively a best practice approach. And the framework recognises 5 levels of competency, ranging from a firefighter in development to a subject matter expert who is then influencing national guidance.
Okay, so that's a good explanation of what the framework is, but what was the purpose of developing the framework in the first place?
It may be assumed that all personnel of an equivalent level are expected to have the same level of understanding and therefore the ability to respond, but we know that this is not the case. So the framework offers an essential underpinning structure for fire and rescue services to train and measure their performance against, offering a consistent approach nationally. It offers a tool to demonstrate the standards and professionalism of the fire and rescue service, which, as we know, is a key component of the fire and rescue operational competence standard, and also the recent white paper reforming our fire and rescue service consultation. The framework also links into the work of the National Fire Chiefs Council People Committee and other NFCC work streams. So the framework provides a clear differentiation between a firefighter who is safe to respond to road traffic collisions and those teaching others.
Okay, thanks, Dan. David, can I come to you? So the National Operational Guidance and Fire Standards is at the core of the Fire and Rescue Service. Could you give us a little bit of an insight as to how the framework links to National Operational Guidance and the standards?
National Operational Guidance provides details around all the hazard, control measures and tactical actions against a range of scenarios. What the Extrication Framework does is drill down deeper into tactical actions, providing guidance for the knowledge, understanding and operational skills for individuals to obtain and maintain competency around vehicle extrication. So rather than giving a blanket layer of loads of control measures for everybody, it really identifies what a firefighting development needs to know versus an operational commander versus a coach or a subject matter expert. By doing this, it provides a really good framework on which to ensure operational crews are meeting the applicable areas of national guidance. And by so doing, they meet the fire standard for operational competence. And also they can link this into competence frameworks and also develop their behaviours within the leadership framework.
Thanks, David. Paul, can I come to you now? So Dan and David have given us a really good understanding of the purpose of the framework, how it fits with National Operational Guidance. Can you give us some background on how the framework was developed?
The framework was originally developed to underpin the standards from the UKRO rescue challenges. The first draft was developed by UKRO volunteers from across the UK, so that's the cohort of assessors. With the support of the Central Programme Office, further work was done through a wider network. This refined the details and ensured consultation with the new services from across the UK. The framework was restructured a number of times to accommodate the different operating models that fit across different FRSs and the training requirements across England. It represents years of continuous learning and the evolution in the field of vehicle extrication in the UK.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Dan, if I can come back to you. So taking everything we've discussed on board, what does that mean for fire and rescue service training managers and for firefighters?
Yeah, no problem. It provides fire and rescue service with a reference point for their road traffic collision risk and skills training needs analysis. So it answers the question of what operational personnel at different levels should be able to do and operate competently to. It helps with financial planning by assisting fire and rescue services to define the amount, the type, and the content of the training required for each member of staff. And it also, the framework will greatly assist in collaboration between fire and rescue service partners. For example, sharing instructors, reducing the multiple cross-border mobilisations to the same road traffic collision incident, for example. Very clearly, it enables an assessment of training providers, course syllabus and qualifications, and very importantly, as mentioned previously, it aligns to national operational guidance, so therefore answering the question of how such is embedded within a given fire and rescue service.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So, coming to you, David, if I may. So, taking into consideration the requirements of national operational guidance and the pressures that are put on fire and rescue services at the moment across a number of different fields, how are firefighters and officers going to be able to maintain the requirements of this standard, and how is that going to be measured?
The extrication framework is there really to ease that burden. At present, if you're aligning your competence framework just purely on national guidance, then really you're expecting everybody to know everything, and we know that that's just not the case. So within the framework, each level has been designed to reflect the appropriate parts of national guidance and current best practice, and with links with UKRO, it gives us all the best practice and innovation as things go on. So following consultation, the framework has been structured to allow some flexibility for all fire and rescue services in order to facilitate an easy alignment to all a range of different response and training models. So whatever your response model is or your training model is, at least now you've got a framework to pin that to get some good commonality either across regions and hopefully even nationally. And as the framework has taken the guidance and filtered it down into the required knowledge, skills and understanding at the various levels from firefighter through commands to subject matter expert, it really does make it clear who needs to know what in terms of vehicle extrication, hazards, risks and tactical actions. So instead of a blanket approach of all needing to know everything, firefighters and officers are directed to the specific areas that they should be proficient in, and that leads to knowing what areas they should be assessing in the workplace.
Ralph, can I bring you in here? So obviously you do a lot of work with the IFE. So what links has the framework got to the IFE?
The IFE runs a number of contextualised registers. At the moment, these are more or less around fire safety. However, we see within the future these been expanding out, particularly in terms of relevance to operational personnel. The institution is very keen to ensure that third-party accreditation is available wherever possible. And through the Engineering Council, we feel that this is the route that this framework can go. We've examined the framework in detail, and we're absolutely confident that not only will it produce a raft of qualifications, but also enable the practitioners particularly to link their skills into Engineering Council at engineering technician level.
Okay, so Ralph, me as a serving operational firefighter, taking all this on board, how would I be able to obtain the qualification?
We very much see this in terms of vocational training and assessment. So the framework itself has the 5 levels, with the higher levels being involved in assessment of practice. We will use that existing framework of assessors and instructors to ensure that those personnel that are being assessed will be done in an on-the-job manner, which will lead to, as I said before, direct entry into the institution at a technician level of membership for those at level 2, and also hopefully Engineering Council registration for those at level 2, and those at the higher levels obviously we'll be looking at membership at a graduate or member level and potentially higher levels of Engineering Council registration, but very, very much done in the vocational style of assessment.
Okay, so if I've understood that correctly, as an operational firefighter, I could be assessed in my workplace and receive a qualification in road traffic collision and the ability to become a IFE member at a technical level just by coming to work, doing my role, and then a formal assessment. Is that correct?
There are a number of things that you will need to maintain. Primarily in those is your CPD record, but these records are already kept in various formats, training records, etc., etc. But we're extremely keen at the IFE to ensure that we are relevant to those persons at that level that are carrying out these the duties that are delegated within the framework. And so, yes, basically, you come to work and you will get a qualification.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ralph. So, Paul, if I can just come back to you. So, Ralph has talked a little bit about the different levels within the framework. Could you elaborate a little bit and explain what the levels are and how the framework works?
Right, within the framework, there are 5 levels. Level 1 is the base level RTC operator or entry level. And this is someone who's safe to operate on the incident ground and provide a fundamental role in scene safety and the setting up the equipment and preparing the vehicle for casualty extrication. As we move up to level 2, an RTC practitioner is somebody who's an operator, a technician, or involved in heavy rescue. A competent technical operator, which includes identified and additional competence requirements for specialist or heavy rescue practitioners. And move on to level 3, which is the incident command level. This is incident command level 1 and 2, operational incident command, with additional competency requirements for tactical commanders. And move on to level 4, which is a trainer or instructor. An RTC trainer, which includes additional competence requirements for service or regional level instructors. And the final level, level 5, is a subject matter expert. This additional level recognises an individual who influences national guidance and good practice. They're usually active members of the of NFCC recognised organisations such as the IFE or the UKRO.
If I've understood this right, within each level, it offers a degree of flexibility to fit the different requirements of different services, how they, the level of their instructors, so station-based instructors against service-wide, and then your standard rescue operator, if you like, against somebody who works in a specialist rescue arena, such as heavy goods.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, within that, we've got 3 areas. We've got the awareness criteria, the knowledge criteria, and the performance criteria. The awareness criteria states that's to meet an awareness of an individual must be that the function or task presents a risk and that controls need to be introduced in the working environment. If they're exposed to function, anyone with only an awareness must be provided with supervision at all times. The next level, the knowledge criteria, is to meet the knowledge an individual must demonstrate that they have underpinned understanding of the task or function. This includes the contributory factors, risks, hazards, and control measures that they may encounter. This includes the contributory factors, risks, hazards, and control measures. Individuals must have the knowledge to perform consistently or to be effective in their specific role. This criteria applies to individuals in development, in a supporting role, or where they no longer take the functions or tasks practically, such as incident commanders, but still need the underpinning knowledge to make that decision or influence or change. Then finally, the performance criteria. This is to meet the performance criteria. Individuals must also have the knowledge, understanding, and demonstrate application of a task in a practical environment. Here, an individual must be able to undertake the task effectively and safely without any supervision. So those are the 3 criteria that we use across the assessment.
Okay, so David, if I can come back to you, we've discussed the framework and how it fits within the operational arena of the Fire and Rescue Service. But how does it link to other similar frameworks, and how is it going to meet future standards?
As Paul described, the framework includes the overall expectations at each level of expertise, and then clearly sets out the awareness, knowledge, and performance needed at each level, alongside any prerequisite skills needed, such as casualty care and trauma care. And if you look at the framework, it's similar to other standards in that it's broken down into clear sections, such as legal, casualty care, sea management, vehicle technology, space creation, etc. And the framework also sets out a frequency analysis in terms of a required level of CPD for each level, thus bringing in a national level of continued professional development for vehicle extrication for the first time ever. So some fire and rescue services who look at vehicle extrication and think, well, do we just do an initial course and then refresh it every year, every 2 years, or every 3 years? Well, that's now answered now within this framework as to what the level of CPD is. And more importantly, with a CPD, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bring people back in for a centralised run course. Workplace activity does count for your CPD underneath this framework. I know at Kent Fire and Rescue Service, we've looked at our competency framework and we've managed to make it become a recognised educational programme with the IFE. So our firefighters who maintain their competence over a 24-month period are able to claim technician standard of the IFE. And likewise, with this framework, firefighters who are able to complete all of this and get assessed on it will be able to apply at least at technician level, which allows them to transfer over to the engineering council as an engineering technician. So this framework really does align with other frameworks out there. And the way this framework is set out, any new developments or best practice can easily be added into the framework into different sections. And that really allows this framework to be future-proof, because within vehicle extrication and new car technology, every year things are coming out and we're finding new things and new risks and hazards that our firefighters need to be aware of. And this framework is really robust enough to be able to acknowledge and bring in that new learning as we find it.
Thanks, David. Okay, so just to finish off, Dan, can I come to you? So you're a Chief Fire Officer. What does the Extrication Framework provide you that you don't already have?
Well, firstly, just for clarity, Surrey Fire and Rescue Service will be following this as recognised best practice, and we will be applying it consistently throughout the approach of developing our firefighters, our instructors, and enabling the service to contribute to the development of national guidance by supporting staff to become subject matter experts. So what that does for us is, in addition to the work that we're already doing within the service around career pathways, the framework provides a skills pathway for staff that want to develop in that way. In Surrey, one of our main risks is road. And due to the varied road networks and the volume being very busy on the strategic road network, this extrication framework supports the development, but also the mitigation of that risk identified in our community risk management plan. And then finally, and always of great value to our communities, the extrication framework will enable our service to provide a better level of response and therefore community outcomes.
As my guests have described, fire and rescue services from across the country have influenced the development of the Extrication Framework. It is designed to be flexible and supports compliance with national operational guidance and fire standards. The additional benefits of the IFE endorsement allows firefighters to obtain a qualification and membership to the IFE in a vocational setting. I'd like to thank those who were involved in the development of the framework and their continued support in the advancement of professional rescue. Until next time, stay safe.